So the traditional budgeting is it's getting to be the point where it's really difficult to do it without putting in a lot of work. So it just kind of all lended itself to putting this one number concept where I'm just really looking to like, hey, if we can get your budgeting down to one number, meaning that here's the amount of money that you need to run your life over the next 4 weeks, and just keep your gross spending underneath that and have savings and everything else accounted for in the background. That really opened the door for clients to be able to save more.
Welcome, Model FAs. David DeSalle here, president of Model FA and your host of the Model FA podcast. And I'm really excited to have our guest here today, John Crane, talking about a topic that I think a lot of advisors and certainly clients shy away from, and see if we can't simplify this process, simplify this conversation, and truly help clients with one of the most tedious aspects, of planning. John is the author of The One Number Budget, Why Traditional Budgets Fail and What to Do About It. It's a book that offers readers a fresh approach to budgeting that makes it easier for them to both plan and achieve their financial goals. He's used his knowledge that he's gained over the last 20 plus years, guiding hundreds of families of business professionals, executives, and physicians to financial success, to actually write this book. He's also the founder and CEO of financial services firm Crane Financial. He's just like all of you. He has his CLU, his CHFC, and holds his Series 7, 63, and 65, as well as life and health insurance licenses. And his practice, he provides strategic planning and financial engineering to executives at small and medium-sized businesses, specialty specific physicians, and other high net worth individuals. So with that being said, John, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So give us a sense, so as I was going through your bio, you've been in the business for, 20 some odd years. And I'm always curious, how people actually got into this business. I mean, when I was an advisor for 7 years, and I wasn't necessarily, born out of the womb and said, I want to be an advisor. I wanted to be a baseball player, an astronaut, but I wasn't tall enough and I wasn't smart enough. So then I became an advisor. But what kind of got you into the industry at the beginning?
Wow. Okay. Well, I had the most natural transition into financial services industry by right out of college, going to work for the phone company. So I went to go work.
I sense some facetiousness coming along when you teed that up.
Yeah, sorry. I guess as part of my bio, I should mention that I'm from New York and we tend to be a little sarcastic. But I originally went to go work for the Sprint Corporation right out of college, and I worked my way up through the ranks. So I started out in residential customer service, and then business customer service, business sales. I spent a year working in the operations department, learning how to project manage. And when you look at the cumulative work of and the training that I got from Sprint, all of it actually is immensely helpful to me now. But that wasn't what I was necessarily intending to do when I started out there. But the way that my path, I spent about 10 years in telecommunications, and about eight years into those 10, I realized that I just wasn't cut out to be a part of the corporate machine and wanted to do something different, but I just didn't know what. Spent about 2 years researching lots of different careers. I built this very informal process of how to figure out what I was meant to do. And part of that process was to interview people that knew me well after I'd have an idea of like, well, what about this career? And I would go to talk to people that knew me well. And I said to them, could you see me as a financial advisor? And out of all the other ideas that I had, the response I got most often to that question was, yeah, I could see you being a financial advisor. And not only could I see you doing it, but if you choose to do that, call me. I want you to manage my stuff. And that's when I heard that a few times, I'm like, okay, I figured it out. And that was 20 years ago.
It's interesting. First of all, damn, you put a lot of trust in those around you to guide to guide your life. So I'm glad it's worked out so far. What were some of the beginning stages once you ultimately did make that decision? Like, and maybe you did this, but I'd be shocked if you woke up one day and you're like, all right, Crane Financial, here we go. I would imagine that there was some other stepping stones or companies that you were involved with, in advance of launching your own firm, but I could be wrong. So help me understand
No,
that
you're
journey.
spot on. No, you're spot on. So I started interviewing. I didn't really know anything about the financial services industry. I thought I knew a lot about personal finance because I was a loyal reader of Money Magazine. So I was like, I know everything I need to know. So that was a joke. Again, I put the sarcasm flag up there, but I started interviewing all these marquee names that you would know, and went and interviewed. And I had this one key question that was important to me to get answered. And every time I asked it, I got really disappointed. And the question that I would ask is like, hey, clients come to you, they bring this big box of financial stuff, and you analyze it and you give them guidance on what they should do with their money. What exactly is that based on? And what I was looking for was some sort of a methodology. And what I was hearing, and this is 20 years ago, so hopefully, this has changed, but what I was hearing a lot of was just sales. I was hearing, well, they've got their insurance, we show them our insurance. Well, they've got their mutual funds, we show them our mutual funds. And I'm like, yeah, but what ultimately, like, how do you prove out that recommendation is the right one? And I wasn't really getting really good answers. And then I interviewed with the father of a good friend of mine from college, and he was the general agent for Guardian Life in the Baltimore area. And they didn't have an office at the time in DC. I just really went to him for advice. I didn't really expect to go work for him. And I said, look, I'm asking this question, I'm not getting good answers. So I'll ask you, like, what do you do? And what's your methodology? And at the time it was called Leap, but now Guardian, for the last almost 20 years now, a platform called Living Balance Sheet. And he says, oh, we use a living balance sheet. And he said, but instead of me telling you about it, I invite you and your wife to come in and sit with one of our advisors, and they'll do your plan. And if you like what you're hearing, then maybe you want to come work here. So we went through that process, and they had me from the first meeting because the process was very tutorial driven, and I could see myself teaching my clients about each one of these different financial topics and leading them down the path to where it wasn't just me telling them what to do, but there was some self-discovery built into it. So that's essentially, and I've been with them the entire time. I've not worked anywhere else in the financial services industry.
So Crane Financial is essentially a DBA with Guardian, right?
100%. Yes.
Cool. Your friend's father was smart in that he's like, well, if you don't end up working with me, you're gonna end up working with me. It just depends on what that setup actually looks like. So I'm getting paid for my time either way.
Sure.
So the topic, and I alluded to it, when I mentioned your book as well. But I know when I was an advisor, and even now when I'm not, just like in my own personal life, I hate putting together a budget. I hate helping people put together their budgets because they hate putting together their budgets. It's very tedious. It's tough to track because certain line items in the budget like fluctuate, like your mortgage stays the same, but like going out to eat changes all the time. Like
right.
The amount you pay for gas, changes all the time. So I'm going to start off with just a general question to kind of kick you off. How do you think through budget, or even actually before that, what made you start to think through budgeting in a different way than what most people tend to do?
Sure. I shared a lot of the frustrations that you just articulated. I built this spreadsheet. I'm kind of a spreadsheet guy. So I built this spreadsheet where I had the fixed costs on one side and the variable costs, because I wanted to focus the client towards variable, because that's typically where the problem lies if they're having difficulty saving. And the spreadsheet would automatically calculate what the alleged surplus was in their budget. And I would walk them through the process, and we'd get all the data entered. And let's say, for example, that the estimated monthly surplus was $2,500. So I'd show them that, and then I'd say, okay, so we've got about $2,500 worth of surplus. Let's see if we can capture some of that to boost your savings rate, because right now you're saving about 6%. We need to, if you want to retire, you're going to have to save more than that. And they would always go into this feeling of scarcity when they would look at that monthly number, and I joke around, they would start to sing. They see the $2,500. I'd recommend we capture some of that. And I don't know. Like, well, look, let's see if we can capture half of it. Let's see if we can move $1,200 a month into something that's long-term wealth building. Well, let's do $250. And it was just fear, because they didn't really have a strong sense as to where their money was going. And the other frustration I had as an advisor was I never got that spreadsheet filled out more than once. They would fill it out in the original meeting. After that, I wanted it to be part of the annual review, but they would never really do it. So we'd end up kind of doing it on the fly. It was never accurate. And again, that feeling of scarcity was just always there. So I eventually heard about this concept through a friend of mine, and just to flip the budgeting process on its head and say, well, instead of tracking 40 things, why don't we just track one and let them deal with the other 40? Because at the end of the day, as you were alluding to, David, the clients don't really want me involved in their spending decisions. And quite honestly, I don't want to be involved in their spending decisions. It's kind of, I know there's financial advisors out there that do this. I see it from the budget shaming that happens from the talking heads on TV that, make fun of their clients about, like how much they spend going out or the truck they bought or whatever. When you're making comments about that, you're commenting on their values, and, that's going to make them not like you. And if they don't like you, you can't help them. So I wanted to simplify things to kind of get out of that role of the detail. Another thing that I've noticed as of late, you think about the advent of stores like Amazon and Walmart, right? When I get my checking account statement and I'm using my debit card and I see Amazon, 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 the first thing I think is we got to stop going to the Amazon site. But the second thing I think is I don't even know what this is. Because each one of those Amazons, it could be Amazon grocery, it could be just like household products, it could be clothing, it could be lots of different things. I don't know what it is. So the traditional budgeting is it's getting to be the point where it's really difficult to do it without putting in a lot of work. So it just kind of all lended itself to putting this one number concept where I'm just really looking to, like, hey, if we can get your budgeting down to one number, meaning that here's the amount of money that you need to run your life over the next 4 weeks, and just keep your gross spending underneath that and have savings and everything else accounted for in the background. That really opened the door for clients to be able to save more and be more successful.
So that was sort of the precipice of kind of rethinking and re-guiding, the way that you helped with, this area of the plan. What does that look like in reality? So, and I have a follow-up question, but I want to hold on to it for a moment. But what does that look like in reality when you're with a client to simplify it rather than the old way of, $237 a month for gas and, this and
Right.
that? Like, help me understand like what that actually looks like.
Sure. As you know, and as many of your listeners will attest to, when I decided to become a financial advisor, I thought I was going to spend all my time with spreadsheets and analyzing investments. But what I realized is that, we're unlicensed and untrained psychologists a lot of the time. Yep. So the budget spreadsheet, and people can go to, if they want to get a copy of it, they can go to the book website, onenumberbudget.com and /worksheet, and they can download it. But the rough look and feel of it is up at the top, I've got gross income. And then the very first thing I have clients doing, I'm recommending that they save 20% of their gross income going to long-term wealth building. That is specifically their retirement. So 20% right off the top. Then the next line item that I'm deducting for is taxes, because as you know, the IRS is just going to take it anyway. And then after I back out those two, that gives me what's available for lifestyle. So that's on an annual basis. And then I divide that by 12 to get it to a monthly number. And then I leave 2 lines to back out the 2 largest fixed expenses. This is just to kind of simplify. So 2 largest fixed expenses for most people, housing is usually number 1. And then number 2 is usually student loans or childcare. And then once I back those 2 out, then that gets down to the bottom of the 1 number. So at that point, I work through the calculation. I always default to 20%, no matter what the client currently is saving. And then I get down to their 1 number and I say, okay, if we back out housing and we back out student loans, this is the 1 number. Can you get through 4 weeks on this number? And then I just wait and see what they say. And surprisingly, a lot of the time they'll say, yeah, actually, I think I can. And then I've got a little crib sheet off to the side and I see how much they're actually saving, and it might be 8%. I'm like, okay, well, you're telling me that you believe you can get through 4 weeks on this amount of money. Currently, you're only saving 8%. So we kind of need to move the needle to put you in a spot where you can ultimately retire. This is why I made the comment about we're amateur psychologists. So before I told you that traditional spreadsheet always resulted in the clients being really scarce and they would start singing, right? When I started using this spreadsheet and they would see that they're saving 8 and I was telling them to save 20 and they saw that it was possible, they get like really competitive with themselves. They're like, oh, we're only doing 8. Yeah, we can do 20. And some of those jumps can be pretty big, It's like $1,000 or $2,000 a month. And now I'm having the opposite discussion. Like now I'm like trying to throttle them back a little bit. I'm like, well, sure, the spreadsheet says that, but making a $2,000 change to your cash flow is a little ambitious. So why don't we do 1,000 and see how that goes? And then if that works well, we'll do the next 1,000, but because I don't want to mess up anybody's monthly, right? But that was the aha moment when people started they were the ones that were initiating hey, no, we can definitely save more. Yeah, clearly this is the thing we need to do versus well, I don't know, let me think about it, which I was getting with the old way.
Well, it seems like you're having, I think the majority of people, they enjoy spending money more than they do saving money.
Sure.
Instant gratification. So it seems like what you're doing is you're playing off of that comment right there, which is the last number is how much they can spend. And then you revert back to what's possible to save, as opposed to here's all your spending and then here's what you have to save. So you're kind of just like flipping it on its head. I guess my follow-up question would be, let's say someone, says, no, like I can't get by on that. Do you still ever go through kind of line by line to figure out what could be cut out, if anything, or do you feel as if naturally they make changes and adjust to fit within that spending number? I'm just trying to think of examples where, people are just spending egregiously and don't realize it. There's been times in my life where, you swipe your credit card and then you look at your statement and you're like, oh, damn, that's way more than I thought it was. So how do you handle those types of scenarios where they don't buy into it right away and they need that extra layer of help?
So this is one of the things I talk about in the book, that traditional budgeting is a snapshot in time and it only really addresses the month. And for a lot of folks, as you're alluding to and what you just said, as long as they have more money than month, they think they're good. But one of the key concepts that I'm bringing out in the book is that there's a lifetime perspective on cash flow that you need to take into account. And what I speak to in the book is if you imagine a lifetime, if you imagine a lifetime of 90 years and you break it into thirds. So you've got the first 30, the middle 30, and then the final 30. The first 30 being growing up years, the middle 30 being the engine, that's your career, and then the final 30 being retirement. What I impress upon the client is I'm like, look, the first 30, your parents basically pay for that. So that's, and for most of the people that I meet, I'm meeting them when they're older than 30. So there's really not a lot for me to talk about there. So you got this middle 30, that's the engine, and then the final 30 of retirement. You basically have 60 years of living that's got to be paid for out of 30 years of earning. And that is a line that kind of came out of me going through the process of writing this book. And that's kind of my cocktail party line. And when I throw that out there, typically, people that don't think about budgeting too much, that's when their head will go back a little bit. And because it's kind of you think about it, like 30 years of earning to fund 60 years, like that puts tremendous pressure on those 30 years. And when people hear about that and think about it that way, then it's more like, okay, this savings percentage, this is a big deal. Like I need to address this. To circle back to what you originally asked, do I ever get involved in the traditional budget? I'll do it, but like kicking and screaming. I really will make the client like basically beg me to do it. And the reason why is, one, I really believe that the 20% off the top is a better way to think about it. And if they're not saving 20%, I'll back that number down in the budget just so that we can get a sense as to where the cash flow is going at a high level. But the emphasis is always going to be on, it's like at that next raise, you need to allocate some of that raise towards building your savings percentage. And if you can find ways to recapture money, you need to work on building that savings percentage. I want them doing it because they're the ones that have to live with it. Yeah.
I really like the cocktail line that you mentioned about how, we have 60 years that need to be paid for, in 30 years or however it was.
Out of 30 years of earning. Yeah.
Out of 30 years of earning. What's interesting about that is, or what it reminds me of, I should say, is, and I've seen these ads for this on like Facebook and Instagram, whatever. It's like a poster board or picture frame that's like, it says like my life in weeks.
Yeah.
And you have a visual representation of like, oh damn, I'm making this number up because I'm not good at math on the fly like this, but I have 33 more Christmases.
Right.
I have 33 more 4th of Julys.
Yeah.
And when you start thinking about it like that, you like the idea is that you savor that moment, and if you're in a better mood because you're focusing on having an amazing time, because after that you have 32,
right,
and then you have 31, and so on and so forth. So as soon as you shared that line, I thought of that example where it just helps put it into perspective for folks, because like even me right now, I'm 32, turning 33 shortly, and it's like, oh, I'm still young, I got plenty of time. And it's like, nope, I'm 2 years into my true earning years, and I need to make sure that I'm planning for the last 30. So it's interesting hearing that. I can see how mentally it shifts people's thought process for sure.
Yeah, it does. And you think about when somebody might choose to work with me, if they come to me and they're in their mid 40s or they're starting to get into their 50s, they don't have 30 years. So if their balance sheet doesn't look that good and they're looking at me and they're high income earner and they don't have the ratio, if their ratios of net worth to what they earn really aren't lining up, and it's a tough discussion, because in addition to that, if they're in their 50s, if they've got kids, then the kids are probably getting ready to go off to college. So there's just, and the only reason I bring that up here and right now is just that middle 30 has a lot of pressure on it. And if you can help clients see that, then the savings discussion is a little bit easier. And the other thing I do, this is for your audience, the other thing I do is, like, when folks aren't saving 20% of their income, is I'm always trying to make them feel okay about it in the moment. And then, like, let's just try and move the needle by 1 to 2%. Like, let's not try and come up with the 20% right now. Like, can you go into your 401k on your app on your phone? Can you increase your savings by 1% right now? Can you do that? Because they're not even going to miss that. Like, that's an easy one. And once they see that they can get some momentum with it, then they start to catch on and get more excited about it. Which is, again, that never happened when I was using the traditional budgeting spreadsheet. Never happened.
Before we transition, I will say, you speaking about this in the 30-year increments makes me feel a little less guilty from my spending habits in my 20s. Oh man. Well, this is super helpful. I think what I like about it is, it's not like a complicated shift. It's not like, advisors need to totally overhaul their process. They just need to kind of flip it upside down. And it's an easy change. And you said, I was typing in the website, onenumberbudget.com/worksheet. And is this worksheet something that, like, individuals can use and then advisors can, like, model after, or what can they expect when they go and download that worksheet?
Sure. It's something that they can use. Of course, it's got my branding and stuff on it, but I mean, let's face it, it's a pretty simple math problem. So my main goal here really is to help as many people as possible. The traditional budgeting, when you look at it nationally, like, what's it given us? It's given us people, these are real numbers. It's given us people that the median net worth for the demographic of 55 to 64 is roughly $215,000. Like, that's not going to get it done for these families. So, by and large, the advisors leading the charge, like, we need to move the needle on that demographic, and help them arrive at retirement with more than 215,000. So that's my long-winded way of saying that, look, I enjoy the props or people saying thank you or whatever, but at the end of the day, if you can take what I've got and, turn it into something that you can use to help your clients, please go do that. Please go do that.
Well, I appreciate that. And I just sent over my information, and you have both a printable version and an Excel spreadsheet. I got the Excel spreadsheet open over here. And to your point, not to take away from its effectiveness, but it's pretty simple. And I would imagine it's much, much, much easier to go through with a client. So I appreciate you being open to sharing that stuff. But before we do wrap up, John, and for folks who are listening, if it happens to be the first episode that you're listening to, one of the things that I do with all of our guests is, and it's in an effort to distill a reading list for folks, and preferably do so with books outside of our industry. I find that, in our industry, we can kind of get stuck in this box with our CFP materials, our, whatever other licenses we're taking, as well as, like, how to build a financial services business. And there's so many good ideas in other good books outside of our industry that we can actually take and apply. Because when you think about it, when you compare the financial services industry to, say the software or the tech space, like, we're a bunch of dinosaurs over here, right? So if we can take some ideas and apply it to the business and help modernize what we're doing, it's only going to help. But John, when we were talking beforehand, we had connected on a book that we both love, which is Relentless by Tim Grover. Why'd you pick that? What's the impact that it's had on you?
Oh my gosh. I found out about that book through a gentleman that I went to speaker training with. His name is Bo Eason, and he has this 3-day school that I went to, and that book recommendation came out. So the book Relentless by Tim Grover. Tim Grover was the trainer for Michael Jordan through all his championships, and Kobe Bryant and Dwayne Wade. And if you watched the Last Dance documentary that was on Netflix, Tim Grover's in it, and the book itself is really speaks to like how their brains work. The athletes that are operating at those high levels, and it was just such a great window into it. But what I got out of it specifically that was most helpful to me was, I don't know exactly what part of the book this came out for me, but it gave me a permission slip to be my true self, and that was something that I was lacking. And maybe it came from my time in corporate America, but I always, it's like, well, we have to be very professional and we have to do things a very certain way. Everything has to be very scripted. And I mean, my true self would come out in flashes here and there, but I was basically being what I thought a financial advisor was supposed to be, according to, what I read in a book somewhere. And that was limiting my effectiveness. And once I got that permission slip to really be myself and just go out there and just focus on helping people and just, doing it the way that I think it needs to be done, that's when my business really started to grow quickly, and I started having more fun, and my effectiveness would just went up.
Yeah, I think oftentimes advisors, especially when we do, coaching for advisors, and a lot of times they're looking for the tips and the tricks and the tactics, which of course, we have and we can help with. But oftentimes the biggest breakthroughs are when there's a shift in mindset, as opposed to using a new tool. So I'm glad that you brought that up as well. And have you read his other book, Winning, yet?
Oh yes, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, those two are yearly reads for me since I read it the first time. So it's and if you haven't, it's good to also, if you just type in Tim Grover wherever you listen to podcasts, all the various folks who have interviewed him, all those episodes will pop up, and it's cool hearing different stories or similar stories in a different way, from him. Plus, the tonality in his voice, just motivates the heck out of you. So, but John, this has been great. I appreciate you shedding some light on, quite frankly, a pain in the butt topic, and make it not so painful.
Oh, great.
With budgeting for folks. And if you're listening to this, I would highly encourage you to go and download that worksheet. And John, can you say that one more time? Because I X'd out on my end over here once I downloaded the spreadsheet.
Sure. It's onenumberbudget.com/worksheet. And it's the kind of the methodology and the thought process behind it is all laid out in the book. And also on my book website, you can also download the first 2 chapters. So that might be something you want to look at as well.
Awesome. And I imagine, if you guys get the book as well, it'll help you understand this at a deeper level than perhaps what we were able to get into today, which will in turn help you communicate it more effectively, with folks. So would encourage you to support John, grab the book. And John, is this something that can be shared with clients as well? Maybe if they're having an issue with budgeting, or is it meant for advisors, or does it not matter?
I don't personally think it matters. I wrote the book with the end user in mind.
Okay.
For the husband and wife that are struggling to find something that works for them in terms of budgeting. That's who I wrote it for. That's how I speak in the book. Can an advisor use it as a tool to help their clients as a giveaway? Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very effective that way.
Love it. Well, cool, John. I appreciate it. And for everyone listening, appreciate your time. And we'll catch you on the next episode. Take care, man.
Thanks.